Chris, we're over here, Chris.
Good.
Chris, you there?
Chris,
there's a
Anthony,
podcast
so
happening.
That's what we're doing.
This now feels like an episode that belongs in PBS all of a sudden, and I don't even know why. I'm looking forward to today's topic, working in the business instead of on it. I tried working on my business instead of in it, and now I'm on unemployment. So I can't wait. Can't wait to see what I did wrong.
I think that I won't even try a second dad joke after that one. Pretty good one, Anthony. Anthony, what if you could 10x your business while working half the hours you do now? 1934, an ambitious mechanic named J. Paul Getty made a strategic decision that would transform him from a skilled technician to oil tycoon. Why don't we use the word tycoon anymore? I feel like it's a great adjective. What would you be a tycoon?
Because roller coaster tycoon kind of ruined it for entrepreneurs.
I think you're probably right. Instead of continuing to fix equipment himself, working in the business, he hired mechanics while he focused on acquiring undervalued oil leases during the Depression, working on the business. This single mindset shift extracted himself from daily operations to focus on strategic growth, enabled Getty to build an empire worth over $8.3 billion adjusted for inflation, while his competitors remain skilled but small operators. Today, Anthony, on How to Founder, we're going to be talking about a crucial difference of working in versus working on the business. I'm Chris Frakes. With me is Anthony Franco. I feel like you're a little sassy this morning, Anthony. You got a little sass going?
I have an incredibly busy day that I'm hoping I can avoid. So I'm trying to have a good attitude about it.
So maybe if we just do a 6-hour podcast today, Greg. But we have a great guest today, Anthony. His name is Greg Mohr. He embodies working on versus in philosophy through his own entrepreneurial journey. After experiencing both worlds, managing 50 plus Taco Bell franchises and grounding through 15 years as a corporate engineer, Greg made the pivotal shift from employed entrepreneur. Following a layoff, he vowed never to work for someone else again and leveraging franchises to build substantial wealth through multiple business. As a Wall Street Journal bestselling author of Real Freedom and host of the Franchise Maven podcast, Greg has helped hundreds of founders escape operational quicksand to build systems-driven businesses that thrive without their constant presence. Greg, welcome. I want to know how the vow take. Did you stand on a mountaintop and say, I will never work in corporate again? Or was it just in the middle of the night where you're like, oh, I can't do this anymore? I think that's
pretty darn close.
Yeah, pretty darn close. So, Greg, welcome. Just give us this idea. Just give us the definition. What is working on the business? What is working in the business? And why does it matter? Why should we care about understanding these things?
So with John Paul Getty, the one that you just gave an example of, if he continued to be a mechanic, then he's just going to be fixing, say he was just fixing cars. He's just going to have one car comes in, he fixes it. Another car comes in, he fixes it. All this time is spent on that one operation. That's working in the business. You can't grow a business if you're the one that's doing all the operational work in there. If you want to grow the business, you have to step back, let somebody else, train somebody else do that. Put a system in place. That car comes in. What do you do when the car comes in? Write that down. That's part one system. Part two system, diagnose it. You want those systems in place. Now you go out and you hire other people. You looked at your business. What are the different people that I need to operate this business? Where do I find them? I go out and find them. I find them, I hire them, I train them, I put them in place. Now they're in place. Now you're working on the business. Somebody else is doing the work. So now you can step back. Now you've got that time then to go out there and acquire another business. You've already put all those systems and processes in place for your one business. Go out and get another one. Put those systems in place for another business. Get on that. Go out there, tell the world about your business, how you're going to do it. And that's how franchising works. Franchises don't want you working in the business. They want you working on the business, building that business up, networking meetings, chamber of commerce. It works. And that's the way to do it, so that as entrepreneurs, we try to have more time for ourselves. That's the whole idea. If you're in there working in the business all the time, you're not going to have that.
He brings up a great point, Anthony, which is, I would say, probably a very, very common path to the entrepreneurial journey is you are the best at doing whatever you do within your office, within your community, that you know it, and you're really good at that. And so you go out and, because I'm not capturing all the value that I get, right? That I give, because I'm the best at doing this. And then they start a company doing the thing that they're good at. I don't know. Let's just say marketing as an example, Anthony. They might start a marketing company, right? Because they're doing that thing. But if you're the person doing marketing, you're basically, what Greg's saying, you're going to be a solopreneur, right? Unless you can figure out how to be an operator, which is a different set of skills. Is that true, Anthony?
Yeah. So this is a very difficult leap for a lot of entrepreneurs. I still struggle with it because my safe space is working in the business. It's the, we've talked about this a lot, Chris. It's easier when I don't know what to do, I go work in it. I'm really looking forward to. I don't know how to snap out of that. In what I'm looking for, Greg, is I'm looking for tactics. Like tactically speaking, how do you work on the business? What are some steps?
So step one, what does your business need to operate? Who needs to do it? What do you do specifically on a regular basis? And who can you get to replace you in that spot? If you're doing all the marketing, for instance, there's lots of marketing people out there. Go out there, figure out what values, what kind of culture am I creating here? Who is going to match that? And go out there and find those people to do it. But what you need is every aspect of your business. Say for mine, for instance, I've got, who's gonna call my clients up to begin with? Am I going to be the one to do that, or do I have somebody do the introductory call on that? When I go through and search for their franchises, is there somebody that's going to do that? Well, then I can put a person in place for that. Follow-up emails. Do I do that, or do I have a virtual assistant do that? So I can do everything just like you can do everything in your business. But think about all the different aspects of what operates your business on there and who you can get in there to replace what you're doing on that. So as you indicated that yes, especially you, Anthony, you want to get in there and you want to do all that yourself. Well, if that's what you enjoy doing, by all means do it. But just realize growth is going to be stunted quite a bit if you're the one doing everything, because you've only got so much time in your day to do it. But first step in the process, outline every job that needs to be done in that business. And then who do you need to do it for you so that you're not doing it?
There's a great stat that we have in our show notes, Anthony. It says 67% of business owners report working over 50 hours a week, for 50 hours weekly on operational tasks, on the thing it takes. Yet only 30% of those businesses achieve their growth targets. And so you have this fundamental misalignment from a Startup Nation study from 2024. It's this misalignment of what it takes to actually grow your business, and then going and working on the thing that you love to do. I think that, Anthony, just to press on the point that we've talked about before in the show, but there becomes this default thing where we go to work in the business on the thing that's not necessarily most important, but it's the thing that we feel most confident and accomplished when we're doing, right? I mean, maybe just touch on that a little bit, Anthony.
Yeah. I mean, I think what I heard Roy say is, even if I'm the best at it, maybe I should always be looking to replace myself. That's essentially what you're saying. You're always looking to figure out how you can replace yourself. If scale matters, right? If you're happy in doing what you're doing, if you're plugging along, making a good living, you get to make all your soccer games for your kids, and you're not really super worried about being completely disrupted, then you do you. But if you have a growth mindset, you need to think about. I think that stat is really interesting, Chris, because essentially what it says is the biggest inhibitor to growth is the founder. Ironically,
I think in a lot of cases you're right,
and that's
Greg, don't
really
feel
good
bad
insight.
Yeah, Greg, don't feel bad that Anthony just called you Roy, because he calls me Steve most days. So
what did I call him?
You call him Roy. It's fine. Just don't call me late for dinner, Anthony.
Did I call you Roy? Don't know where that came from.
All right.
He's not the best co-host for nothing, folks. All right. So here's the problem, Greg, is we start companies and we're passionate about these companies and we love doing the thing. Let's say you're a mechanic, right? We'll use the J. Paul Getty thing, which is you're a mechanic and you're the best at it. When you hire somebody else to do it, they're not going to do as good of a job for you. They don't care as much as you do by definition. So the quality and standards of the work will start to drop. And so a lot of people, there's this tension between caring deeply about the quality of the work that's delivered, but then also saying, I know I have to delegate, but then seeing the quality of the work diminish because they're not as good as you. I mean, address that, Greg.
Correct. You might get, 80% of you out there on that. One of the things that you have to do, obviously, and, you see it in some of the restaurants, like, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, that sort of thing. They're not a 5-star high-class restaurant. They're good.
Don't tell my kids that.
I was going to say, shut your mouth, Greg, because Chick-fil-A is just.
Chick-fil-A is awesome. I mean, they're great food and all that, but and wonderful people, I understand, to work for. It's more of a job than a franchise, really. But I talked with the owners that absolutely wonderful people to work with out there at Chick-fil-A. But it's not necessarily going to be a 5-star restaurant. It's not a Michelin star restaurant out there. And if that's your goal, is to have a Michelin star business or something like that, then by all means, if that's your goal, as you indicated before, do it yourself, if that's what it takes. But if you're really looking to scale, you're probably not going to get somebody that's was as passionate as you, but you set the standards for them. You maybe get 80% of your standards out there for, one person to do it on that, which if you're going to stay in business has got to be better than all the other people that are doing the same thing to begin with. So maybe 80% is good as long as you're better than everybody else on that. So 80%, when you find how many people can you find to do 80% of your work versus you doing 100% of it, you can find many more on that. And that's how you scale on that. Just keep it in mind, you got to keep those standards up and you got to be better than the next person, guy or girl out there.
Anthony, you and I suck at this. Like, I know you and I suck at this, which is like, we care so deeply about the quality we're delivering. And, one of the stories that I love that you tell me is when you went inside the big agency and you were, working on the team, and then, you sort of took over because you knew the quality of work was going to be low. And then immediately you got moved out because you weren't a cultural fit, right?
I wasn't a cultural fit. Yeah.
Because you wanted to deliver great work, and you did. You delivered great work.
This is the story of my entire life, where I go in and I'm like, all right, this sucks. I'm going to go fix it. And everybody's going to appreciate how clever I was. And in reality, everybody just like, that guy, that's why I struggle to hold an actual job. It's like, that guy just made me look like shit, so I'm going to go complain about him. It is the story of my life.
It's a great point, but here's the thing, and this is what Greg is saying, and this is, I think, really the crux of this conversation, Anthony, is that we got to get over that. You got to be able to be okay with not your level of execution if you want to be able to get out of the business. I think it's really hard to do. And so, Anthony, then Greg, how do you become okay with 80%? That's a hard thing to do for a lot of founders, Anthony.
I think so. The way I do this is I pick the 3 most important things that I don't let go of, and that need to be 100%, and then delegate or let other people work in, right? So I pick 3 things that I'm always working in. The most important, like KPIs. And the other thing that I find really helpful is when you delegate, you have to define measurable goals. You have to define a KPI. For MC Squares, it was number of reviews and number of 5-star reviews. That was a KPI that we had across the entire organization that everybody was measured against. And so when you have the proper measures set up, it makes it a lot easier to give it to somebody else, as long as you're following up and saying, how are we doing on this goal? And you kind of let them self-manage. You let them work in it, and allows you to kind of take a step back and just measure.
Greg, agree, disagree?
Oh, great point. Great point. You've got to have those key indices. One of the things you do, this is what your individual goal is. That's part of team building on that one as well. And keeping people really interested in enjoying what they're doing is that you give them those key things to do, and you follow up with them and make certain that they're doing them. It's just huge for team. Team building is very essential when you're building up a business on that. And you've got to give people goals. If you just send them over there and say, just go fix that car, and they're like, all right, yeah, some might get around to it. But if you say, go fix that car, I want it fixed in 10 minutes, and I want you to point out 3 other things that could be repaired now so that they don't have a problem later with the car. I need you to do that on every single car. So now you got the key indices that you want them to follow through on, and the time frame to do it on. Now they have goals. And now that's a good way also to determine which ones you're going to keep around and which ones you're not. The ones that are going to follow that system, that are going to keep with their goals, achieve their goals. Then you're getting great people that way.
Oh, I think there's kind of 2 tacks here, and I want to go to the other part of this conversation, which is the more tactical area that we're talking about. Then, Anthony, I think you brought up a good one, which is, hey, identify what are the most important things at any given time. Try to create structure around those other things. But Greg, you brought up some earlier. I just want to reiterate those, which is, as we start to figure out how we're going to be delegating, make sure there's a system in place. And so explain to me how you would think about creating a system. And I think you mentioned it right off the bat, which is you got to start by writing down what it is that you do that you believe to be the best practice.
In any business, you've got a flow chart that you go through, a simple flow chart. We used to do this in the semiconductor industry, in the manufacturing world, on that. When we did the Six Sigma stuff on that, we have a flow chart of every step along the way that it takes to, and we made wafers. We made chips. Chips were on the wafers. For those who don't know about it, the little chips that you put in cars and phones and everything.
I love chips. Doritos are my favorite.
There you go. Yeah. Cool Ranch. I'm
Cool Ranch, exactly.
So what you do is you outline the whole process that you have on there, and you have every step in the process of whatever business you do. And then you put down who does it, and then what does it take to get to the next step, and who does that step? What does it take to get to the next step? You identify any key bottlenecks you have in that system in there, and you put down who's going to do it, timeframes of what they do it for, depending on the business that it is. What skill sets you need for each individual person as you're going through there. You get all those identified in your business right away. That will give you a visual then of who you need in each individual position, where the bottlenecks may lie, and then you work with your team, if you've already got a team in place that are doing it, on how to resolve some of the bottlenecks. Do we need more people in this position? Do we need to speed up this position, slow down that position? So that's what I'm relating it kind of to the manufacturing world, which is what we did on that one. But the first step when you're doing your business is that's what you have to do, is just really have an outline, a visual outline. Just put it up on a board, sticky notes, stick in there. We got somebody that does this, somebody does that, somebody that does this, all the way down the line. And that way you can now start identifying who's needed in that position. And also, if once you decide you want to scale up and start building a more business, at each one of those positions, how many more people will you need to take in the new business that's coming in, and what do they need to be trained on? So it's just a good visual to start with.
Anthony, I think some think back to my experience and having done the exercise you just talked about, Greg, but before I did that exercise, a company that is 2-3 years old, even growing fast, I was chasing my tail. I was stuck in the business to such a capacity that I couldn't even prioritize. It was just what was on fire at any given time. Anthony, I know you've been there as well. Even the act of sitting down and just mapping out the workflow, to me, was a relief. Was that your experience or no?
Yeah, I think actually, Greg, and I almost called you Roy again for some reason. I don't know why that name stuck in my head.
You look a little bit like Roy Rogers. You just
I don't know.
You need
I don't know why that name
hat.
stuck. Anyway, so I think what Greg said about manufacturing, there's actually something that interesting happened to me as well. So I've started and exited a couple businesses. They were services and tech businesses. And then I got into manufacturing. And what's interesting about manufacturing is it requires you to systematize the business. And there's a lot to be learned about thinking about your company as a factory and thinking about how do you stamp out consistency. And so when you're talking about services, how do you systematize? How do you document? How do you ensure that that kind of the same quality of product is reproduced, the same quality of customer service, the same quality of marketing gets reproduced? And there's thinking about it kind of like a factory is a really interesting way of thinking about it. Read some lean manufacturing or Kaizen books just to kind of wrap your head around what it's going to look like.
I think
We did
there's
a lot.
one other. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
We did a lot of Kaizens back then in the in the manufacturing world. And the biggest thing if you're in the service industry is to figure out how you're doing is ask your customers. Give them a survey.
Right. Yeah. Wait. I was not told that I have to actually talk to my customers.
Talk to customers? Brilliant. Genius.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great idea. I want to hit one other point, Anthony, and it is one of these underlying components that we just don't talk about in the founder world that much. There is a set of skills it takes: energy, passion, enthusiasm to get a company going. Once a company's going, you are a CEO and you have to become a CEO. And being a CEO is a different set of skills. And you and I, we study it, we've paid attention to it, and we've tried really hard to become very good or at least effective CEOs. But you said it earlier in the episode, Anthony, it's where companies break. You get people that are founders that are passionate about it, but can't make the transition to being a CEO. And it's really, really hard to do. I certainly struggled with it the first time I did it. And now I feel like I'm probably a better CEO than I am a founder at this point. Probably because I'm old and tired. But I mean, Anthony, just comment on that for a moment. And then Greg, I want to get one more question in about
there's definitely a transition in leadership from you have to grow with the business, right? So initially the entire business is you trying to figure it out, maybe you and a couple co-founders trying to navigate it, and then the business starts to mature. And if you don't mature with it, if you don't want to mature with it, then you need to bring somebody else that has that next level skill set. Otherwise, you have to treat that next level, going from 3 people that are very tightly knit working together to 10 people is a big jump. Going to 50 people is another huge jump. Then you get into being the leader of leaders. It's another huge jump. And you have to treat each one of those jumps like a craft in and of itself. And that means reading and talking to other founders and being willing to make mistakes and being willing to let go of things. Greg, I'd love to hear what you think about that.
That describes a business. So we also take businesses from privately owned and put them into franchising as well. And that really describes what it takes to take your business from a privately owned business to become a franchisor. So one thing I tell them, we have some criteria for if you want to franchise, here's a few things. But the biggest thing is the fact that your role is going to change.
Yes.
So you're operating your business, and you probably at this point in time, you may have a manager or 2 or 3 managers if you reproduce it a few times and you're working with those managers. But now as a franchisor and as you're growing and scaling your business, now you're a mentor. So you have a complete change in what your role is. So I tell them that, I can tell you that, it's best if you have 2 or 3 locations already. It's best if your product and service can be used by almost everyone in the US. That's even better. If you're making 100,000 or more net, it's even better. People love it. But the biggest thing is the fact that you're going to have to realize that your role is now going to be completely different, because you're mentoring and you're going to show other people how you grew your business to where it is and have them do it. So you had to grow with that business and do that. And that's I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of us out there in the world, is that, you have your baby, you started it, you grew it up, you love it, you want to get your hands on it all the time. But if you really want to scale, you've got to take that step back, hire fractional CFO if you're just doing it, or a CEO, if you just got a couple of locations on that, or a full-time CFO or COO and that sort of thing. And as you indicated, now you are a leader of bigger leaders. So you got to grow with your business if that's the route you want to go.
It's I think it's a really point that just struck me on the head. Most businesses, Greg, are not franchisable, right? It's just the vast majority are not. However, thinking as you're building your business, if you start to think like you want to build this into a franchise, it forces you to create systems and documentations. What a terrific approach to all businesses, even services business, or even if you're a solopreneur, just starting to be like, okay, let's assume the fact that this is going to be a franchise in 5 years. How would I have to build the company now? Which I think is a pretty smart approach. All right, one more question, Greg, and this is just general. So we know as founders, it's hard for us to get out of the business and start working on the business. I want to get to tactics. And I think probably, Anthony, you have some too, but what's your advice to somebody who's sitting in that space right now, working too hard, working those 50 hours a week on the business stuff and struggling to find the space and mental space in their life to start thinking more strategically about the business? How would you talk to those founders?
The very first thing you need to do is really just change your mindset on that and change how you're viewing the future on that one. That's probably the toughest thing, because a lot of people say that, I can't do it, I can't get out of it. Well, that's because that's where your mind is at right now. You just got to have to change that and realize that you had that idea to begin with, to build that business up. You had nothing. And now you built it up to where you're just so busy, you don't know what to do with yourself on that. So you already changed your mindset once. You just have to now do it again and take that step back and think and visualize, how do you want your life 5 to 10 years from now, or maybe even sooner if you're just, out of control. But the biggest thing I tell people is just, you have to change your mindset. Picture what it is you want to get done, just like you did when you started the business. Now it's a whole nother type of business, and picture that, and then just go through the systems and processes to figure out who you need, where, what do they need, and just change your mind and realize that things just have to be done differently. And you may go down in sales a little bit as you take your step back, and you got to be okay with that, because you're not going to be right there doing it. You've got to be okay with that as well. If you want your life to change, you've really got to think about it differently.
Anthony, I want to ask you 2 questions, because I want to give you the opportunity to give tactics as well. Like, what are the mechanics to do this? But what Greg is describing, it just struck me, was that we build our own cages that we get trapped in as founders. We have this dream, this aspiration. We want to work for ourselves. We want to have freedom. We want to have flexibility. And we end up building a company that we get trapped in because we can't do the things that Greg just talked about. First of all, does that resonate? Because it feels like almost every founder I know at some point gets trapped in the cage that they built. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Yeah.
I think it's fair.
So here's my question. What do you do? For you, what are the tactics you would recommend to founder?
So my favorite tactic I fell into accidentally. At Effective, I found you work 2-3 years in the business without taking a vacation. And then I'm like, I gotta get out. I gotta take my family away and go enjoy life for a week. And the first time I really did that, some really good things happened in the business. Like deals closed. Weird. And a great hire happened. And I'm like, made a joke. maybe I should go on vacation more. And then I took another vacation and the same thing happened. And then I did it a third time and I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe this isn't an accident. maybe
This is
I need
causation, not correlation.
Yeah. Maybe. So I think of it when I want to work on the business. I think of it as taking a vacation from me working in the business. I kind of mentally check out of and I tell everybody, all right, I'm going on vacation, and I really don't. I go do something where I'm working on it rather than in it. And it actually is, that's a tactic that I've used that has worked really, really well.
My advice is similar, and this is what EOS does, which is, I hung out with our friend Hark Anthony, who's an EOS implementer, and they just make you take a quarterly board meeting. It's not a board meeting.
Yes.
It's not what we would call a board meeting. It's an EOS meeting where you go through and do quarterly reviews and you plan for the next quarter. But that's what a board meeting is if you don't have a board. And so even if you're not an EOS shop, or even if you're don't have a board, whatever, you can still do that same discipline, which is come hell or high water, you put a day aside a quarter. That is the most sacred time that your leadership team, if you have one, can spend, look back, figure out what went well, what didn't, and then plan for the future. All right. Really great conversation. Are you ready, Greg, for the speed round? Greg, better to master one operational area deeply or have working knowledge across all functions of the business?
I have working knowledge across all functions of business.
Should founders schedule dedicated strategy time daily or have longer, less frequent strategic planning sessions?
Longer, less frequent, depending on the planning session.
Is it better to hire specialists who need minimal training or generalists that you can develop?
People that you develop are going to be a little more amenable to what you want to do.
And should you focus on process documentation before or after hiring key team members?
Before.
Would you rather have the perfect system with mediocre people or excellent people with an underdeveloped system?
Excellent people. They'll help you develop your system.
I love it. Great conversation. Anthony, what did you take away from today's episode?
A couple things. Working on the business essentially means continuously replacing yourself and growing on your own. I also wrote down this notion of document before delegating. So make sure the systems and there's transfer knowledge, because you're going to probably have to transfer that knowledge multiple times, not just once. Measure what you don't manage. So measure what you measure is what grows. What you measure is what matters. And so the KPIs kind of really should define the objectives of the business. And then elevate your replacement before moving upwards. Security is in that enables you to be able to strategically think and take more vacations.
I'll take more vacations. Deep dive recommendations, the classic E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber, terrific book. We just talked about EOS Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. Even if you're not planning on having it implemented, it's a terrific book to read just because it does structure a lot of these conversations. Built the Cell by John Warillo. Work This System by Sam Carpenter. Really, really good article. I've actually read this one called The Great Delegation Deficit, Why Most Founders Stay Stuck by Harvard Business Review. And of course, Greg, your best-selling Wall Street Journal book. Where can we find your book? Where can we find more information about you? Where can we connect?
So you can find my book, Real Freedom, Why Franchises Are Worth Considering, How They Can Be Used for Building Wealth, out on Amazon, which was where I'd prefer you to go. However, since you're watching this show today, go out there to my website. That's how you find me, franchisemaven.com, franchise, M-A-V as in Victor, E-N.com. Under book resources, you will find a PDF copy that you can download for free. If you'd like to do that, you can email me at greg@franchisemaven.com or do it the old-fashioned way. Pick up the phone and give me a call, 361-772 6401.
What is it? You just said, is that your social security number? I don't even know what that is. What is this thing you call a telephone? I'm not even sure.
Receiver. It's hanging on the wall over there behind you. It's hanging on the wall.
So it's funny when you call me, people are like, what does that even mean? I don't
What is that? What is that?
Hang up the phone. Like, I don't
Hang 10.
Hang up the phone is this. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. I really think it was a terrific conversation. Anthony, what do we have coming up next?
Coming up, we have leadership styles. So we're going to talk about different ways of leading organizations with another best-selling author, Roy Ossing. I'm looking forward to that. For everybody tuning in, thank you so much for joining us. Greg, thank you so much. This is a great conversation. I agree with Chris. For all of those that are watching, go follow us. Go to howtofounder.com. Follow Chris and I on LinkedIn. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a great review on Apple Podcast. Don't need to do all of those. Just do one of those. Just do one of them. We would really appreciate it. And until next time, thank you, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.